cover this a little bit more in detail. Last time I didn't cover this in much detail. After Japan won the Sino-Japanese War, they were awarded with the Liaodong Peninsula, and that peninsula is over here. This area, this little tip sticking out in Manchuria, and that's also where Portsmouth is. And this is what the cartoon is about. Now, when Japan laid claims on Port Arthur, right? So they kicked the Chinese out. Russia had the most to gain if the Japanese were not there, because once again, Russia and Japan both eyed Manchuria, and Russia really wanted a warm water port in the east, just like they wanted one in the west. And so, and it also, the Russians also had the Trans-Siberian Railway at that time, which ran through Manchuria, a railway which runs through Manchuria, from all the way from Russia down here, from Siberia down through Manchuria, and their railway is in this area as well. And so that territory is of interest to them. And so, Russia orchestrated something called the Triple Intervention. And Triple Intervention was led by Russia, France, and Germany. Now, why do you think France would have helped Russia at that time?
They were allies.
Yeah, they were allies. The French bankers had a lot of financial interests to help the Russians, the bankers, and giving Russia the loans to help build the country or help build Russia would do the French good, and that's why the French were like, okay, we like it. The French had no territorial interest in Manchuria because the French mostly had their territories in where?
Indonesia.
Okay.
In India.
Not quite. No.
Indochina.
Indochina. Where's Indochina is where today?
Vietnam.
Vietnam. Yep, that's right. So if you go to Vietnam nowadays they actually have you'll still see a lot of French stuff around, and they actually spoke a lot of French, and the impact of the French there is really immense. So if you have time, if you ever go to Vietnam, you can go check it out. They speak English now as well. Not a lot. They speak some English. Because during the Vietnam War, the American presence there allowed them to help. They had to learn English. And also, France did not want political isolation. France wanted to have allies at that time because with the conflict with Germany, France really needed friends. Germany. Why would Germany be interested in Japan not having that territory? Anybody think yes? Economic reasons. Well, the Germans had Shandong, which is this area, Qingdao here, this area.
Fear of Japan taking over them.
Okay, they want Japan out of the picture. That's one thing. What else?
Germany didn't got much land as
Yeah, Germany was late to the race. That's actually a very good point. Germany was late to the race, and they don't want others to catch up. The main thing that Germany wanted to do was, number one, draw Russia's attention out of Europe and into the east. So Germany saw Russia as a threat. And so if Russia's focus is on the east and more on Japan, then Russia will have pay less attention to what's going on in Europe. So Germany's like, okay, I'll help you out this time. The second thing is, like Hanjun said, that Germany wanted Russia's help in getting territories, getting concessions out of China, because they were late to the imperialist game.
Oh, Germany wanted Russia's blood.
Help to establish territorial concessions in China. So just get Russia's help to take territories in China. They're not really interested in Manchuria. They're more interested in China, and Russia helping them in China would be good, especially since they started imperialism late. And so Japan, of course, didn't like it a lot, but they reluctantly agreed that they'll take money instead of territories. And so they moved out of Port Arthur. And so here's the picture of the Russians throwing them out. They moved out of Port Arthur.
Who? Russia?
Nope, Japan, right? Because Japan knew that they could not take on three European powers at that time. They beat China, they didn't beat any European countries at that time. The Russo-Japanese War has not happened yet at this
Do
time.
you receive money from that?
Yep, they made the Chinese pay more money instead of taking their territory. And so they moved out. To Japan's surprise, once they moved out, the Russians moved in right away. Russians moved in. They moved their army in, and so of course they weren't very impressed. They were like, okay, you're telling us to move out because you want to give Chinese independence and blah blah blah. Russia would made up some reason to get the Japanese to move out, and then the Russians moved in right away and took Port Arthur and fortified it, put an army there, built some defense, and even Germany, France, and even Britain, who was supposed to be part of the Anglo-Japanese alliance, ran because China was in a weakened state at that time. They just had a Russo-Japanese War. No, not Russo-Japanese. Sino-Japanese War. Even the British and all the other European countries went and took pieces from China. Meanwhile, Japan had to leave China. That really made them. I don't know. Well, how would you feel if that happened to you? Yeah, you'll feel betrayed. You'll feel that you're not getting what you justly deserve. And so this was actually a direct cause, one of the main direct causes for Japan to increase their heavy industry and their military strength, especially in the Navy, at the expense of individual needs. So the Japanese people saw this as one of the problems that they had to face, and they had to overcome it. And so this is actually one of the direct causes of the Russo-Japanese War, and to a lesser extent, Japan's entry into World War I when they fought Germany. They declared war in Germany, right? So if you're doing kind of a graphic organizer, it would be Sino-Japanese War.
What's Sino?
China.
Sino stands for what?
Chinese.
Right, China. Why does it stand for China?
Latin.
Sina, right? Latin for Sina. Sina goes to China.
Ah.
Therefore, Sino is Chinese.
How to say Korea in Latin?
Korea, because of its isolation, it wasn't really. There's not a real Latin word for it. But at first, Korea was known as this. Korea is spelled with a C.
Why did they change?
Right? In French, it would be Kore.
Didn't Japanese change to K?
Japan changed it to K.
To change the order of the
Yeah, I think they changed the order of the alphabet or something.
Sanjay.
You know, K comes after J, so that's why they changed it.
Let's change it back to C.
I'm not exactly sure on the veracity of that statement, the truthfulness of that statement. I'm not exactly sure about it, but from my understanding, it's when the Japanese took over that they changed it. So the Sino-Japanese War led to the Triple Intervention, which led to partially the Russo-Japanese War, because the Japanese had a problem with that, and the Triple Intervention also indirectly led to World War I, where it was Japan versus Germany. Okay, so the Triple Intervention was insignificant. I didn't teach it to you last class. And so I need to backtrack a little bit and make up for that.
So after Russo-Japanese World War
After the Russo-Japanese War happened, what year?
1930.
No.
1905 to
1904 to 1905. Yes, it ended in 1905. And when was World War I?
1914.
1914, right? And so it was a matter of 20 years. So definitely Russo-Japanese War was directly related to the Triple Intervention, and to a lesser extent, the war between Japan and Germany. Now, one idea that the Japanese developed during that time is called Kashin Shotan.
다시 좋나?
Okay. There's actually a version of this in Korean as well, but I don't know what it is. I know a Chinese version of this, and I'll write it down.
네.
Um,
Big one.
this one is a very complex word.
8월.
You seen this word before?
Something moon.
No. This is a pretty complex phrase. This means starve,
Oh, rice.
body, taste.
Their body tastes good.
I don't know.
Bitter.
Bitterness.
This is you know the snake. There's a part of the snake where it's like you can pull it out and
Stretchy.
puncture it and then drink its contents. It's
Oh.
I think it's a gallbladder. I think it's called a gallbladder. Yeah, but starve, body, drink, taste, or eat. Gallbladder, which is actually a Chinese proverb. Kashin Shotan. This is in Mandarin called 2生长胆 or 三省党 in Cantonese. It sounds like, and Cantonese is closer to Korean, so I don't know if there's a Korean version of it. 三省党 is what?
If you're desperate,
No, not exactly. What it means is the Japanese, because they saw this as a hardship which they had to overcome. There's a Chinese proverb where there's a king who was kind of exiled, and the king felt it was unfair, and the king wanted to go back and get a revenge. And so when the king was in exile, what he did was he starved his body on purpose. Right, so he did not eat a lot on purpose. He ate some. He didn't eat a lot, and he slept on the bed that's made out of even though he had a good bed to sleep on, he slept on a bed made out of sticks. Even though he had good food to eat, he chose to eat this very bitter food so that it constantly reminds him of the humiliation, so that he wanted to one day rise again and fight his enemies.
To be rise again.
Well, did the Japanese rise again? And this is the model that they took, right? Gashi to Shoten. And so the Japanese saw this as they need to persevere. The meaning of this means persevering. Persevering through hardship, right? And for the sake of revenge. Persevering through hardship for the sake of revenge. And that's the mentality adopted by the Japanese at that time. That was like one of those models, one of their slogans.
So it was Japan's problem.
Yeah, it was Japan's idea of having revenge on the Russians. Did you guys copy this down yet? Okay, so that's Kashin Shokan.
For the sake of revenge.
For the sake of revenge, yep. And so, eventually, the Japanese snuck up to the Russians in the Russo-Japanese War, and also threw them out.
Russia got kicked by who?
Japan in the Russo-Japanese War, right?
So Japan left Port Arthur and then Russia moved in.
Yeah, Japan beat the Chinese in Port Arthur, beat the Chinese in the Sino-Japanese War, took over Port Arthur, got kicked out by the Russians through the Triple Intervention, and then 10 years later in the Russo-Japanese War, they kicked the Russians back out. Right, and then and we looked at this before the Russo-Japanese War broke out later on because of Manchuria and Korea. And so the Japanese won that.